Hey folks, so what we have here is a report. We've got the raw data here that we're going to start with, and we will eventually want it to end up in a pivot table that's formatted as we see here on the formatted tab. But initially as we start working with the data, it's going to appear like this here, just a regular old pivot table as it is on the unformatted tab. So I go back to the formatted tab here really quickly. This isn't by any means super pretty formatting. I just wanted to use a few different formats like italics here, italics and underline. This dashboard around the outside, so it's pretty easy to see it as we step through the different pieces of the process that we're going to go through here. So I am going to go to Copilot, and we are going to enter our first prompt with my friendly Hi Copilot that we always start with. And I am going to ask it to create a macro to put a bold dash black border around just the external border of the whole pivot table. And we also want to make it where it works on any selected pivot table on any sheet. So calling out a couple things there about this prompt. I'm being specific. So this is kind of where a little bit of that, you have sometimes you need to know a little bit of what you're doing to make things a little bit easier on yourself if you're vibe coding or etc. I know that when you do things like this, sometimes Copilot will hard code in, use one specific worksheet or one specific table. In this particular case, we want it to make sure that it's flexible. So we're telling it, any table, any sheet, and we're also specifying that we're working with a pivot table. This isn't just regular old data that you've turned into a table out there in Excel, because that works a little bit differently. So we're going to give it a try, see what we come up with. Okay, so we see here right away, it comes back with code. I wanted to point out, you probably saw there a second ago that it had a little stop icon here where that microphone is appearing. That was the indicator that it was still actually producing the code. Always, should wait until that icon actually goes away. As if you copy it, sometimes I get a little click happy, and as soon as I click the button, I click copy, and the code actually has not finished being produced yet, and it will just copy, what has been produced so far, and you won't be able to run with that. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to copy that whole thing. We're going to go back to our unformatted area here, and we're going to go. So you may or may not have your developer tab kicked off or installed, I guess, on your Microsoft Excel. But if you want me to go through that, I can go through that in a future video. But just for today's purposes, we're going to assume that you do have that turned on. We're going to go on our Visual Basic here, and this is actually just copying over something that I was looking at before. But basically, what we want to do is insert a module or copy over one, and then just paste in the whole thing of what we just created. And then we're actually just going to click save and close that out. So if we are lucky, we should be able to click on our pivot table and run our new macro. So it should be style pivot table outer border. And we are going to click run. And there we see it go. And actually got a little bit fancier than the last time I did this, because now there's a message pops up that says we've applied the border to the pivot table. But you can, of course, also see that here as we went through it. But, one of the things I called out in the post initially is that, you can definitely do this kind of thing in a more iterative fashion. So here we only so far have got the external border put together. We are wanting to do more. So I'm, just for the sake of this video, I'm actually just going to go ahead and take that border out. Another Excel shortcut there for you, Control-1, if you want to quickly get to your formatting. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my next prompt, and I'm going to go back to Copilot, and I say, hey, can you add a black border just below the header row of the pivot table? I'm also telling it, another thing I'll call out here, to please provide the full code for the prompts that I've used so far. Well, you'll find sometimes if you just say, hey, can we add that black border, it might just provide the script for that particular item that you just asked for and kind of leave it to you to actually combine the two. But just for the sake of easiness, I want it to put it all together. So I'm asking it to do that for us. So I'm going to submit that and we will see what we get here. Okay. So we've got our little stop icon going there again. We'll just pause, wait for that to finish producing the code. And we are going to click copy. And what I'm going to do is actually just go back into exactly where we were before. I'm actually just going to erase the whole thing, because right now, ideally, we've got the entire code for everything that's happened so far. And we're going to close that out, save it again, and go back to our pivot table, click on macros, and run it one more time. So you see here that now I've got my second stage here. I wanted this right under the column labels to be bolded. And then we've also still got the external border going on, and it tells us that both of those have been applied. So one of the key things here, just really pointing out that you can actually just kind of iteratively do these kinds of changes. So I'm going to do just a couple more, just for the sake of this video. So I'm going to ask it to do one more ad, and watch what it does here, because this can actually get a little bit tricky in some occasions. So let's do another, just really quick, take away all the borders. We are going to go back to Copilot again, and we're going to say, hey, one more thing. So we want we want any borders inside the table thin and dark gray. We want everything outside to stay in black, and then we want all the code again. So it's just give us one more update. We're going to click on this. And it says, yep, doing all of that. And we are going to wait for it to finish producing the code again one more time. It is done now. Copy. So you see this part of here is pretty much just rinse and repeat. So we're going to go over here, put our code back in one more time. And give it a run. So we're going to go back to macros, going to run that same one again. And it has gone through and actually put in the gray grid. For whatever reason, actually, it's not showing in the right color here. So for the sake of this example here, I'm going to do one more thing. We're just going to go ahead and put it all in the inside there, just to show you what that will look like. One thing that actually I will note here is that, again, live here, because it did not happen that way the last few times I've run through this. It actually kind of glitched a little bit and did a slight change on what we were looking for there. So one last thing I actually want to show here in this video, since it did not, and I had actually set up an example for it to go wrong, is I'm going to show you, I'm going to say, hey, Copilot, the internal lines aren't showing up in gray in that last code. Can we please double check that and update the code? Please include the code from all of the prompts and see what we come up with here. But this is actually the end of what I will do in this particular example, because I do want to show, one, you're going to run into some issues Two, sometimes they're going to be different than what you ran into in earlier times that you actually do the exercise. But I also just wanted to show that you can actually ask it to go back and look at what it did again, and make another attempt. So we are going to go into module 2 again, delete it, put that in there, and let's do one more run. There we go. So this time around, so let's look at what Copilot said happened that first time around. So it gives an explanation of what it was that went through with those borders, and it says what it's going to do and gives another rundown on actually putting that code together. And we saw from the application that change actually did go in. I'd argue that these borders are probably black and not gray, but we won't get into that level of granularity here today. But the last thing I'll put here in this video, not to make you work through all of the different steps that are required here, because there's at least a few more prompts in order to get it to do some of the things I'm doing here in the column and row labels. But it's off to a really good start. I'll put the rest of the code and prompts and etc. in the comment section. So hopefully this is helpful for you and speeds up your day a little bit.